You ever notice how people think nights are quiet, calm, harmless, as if darkness politely waits for them to sleep before it starts whispering truths they've been running from all day? Funny, isn't it? The whole world pretending they're fine until the sun goes down and suddenly their minds start replaying every feeling they tried so hard to bury. Last night, last night did something to them. It stirred things they didn't want to face, cracked open thoughts they swore they'd locked away, made them feel emotions they've been avoiding like a fire they're afraid to touch. And the best part, they were shocked. Shocked by themselves. Shocked by what rose to the surface when no one was watching, when the noise stopped, when they had no choice but to feel what they've been pretending doesn't exist. That's the thing about nights. They expose people in ways daylight never can. They strip away the masks, silence the excuses, and force the truth to crawl right up their spine. And what they felt last night, it wasn't random, it wasn't accidental, it wasn't some passing mood. No, it was a message, a realization, a jolt straight to their core, and whether they admit it or not, it shook them more than they'll ever say out loud. Night reveals emotions. People hide in daylight. Strange how that works, isn't it? All day long, everyone walks around like performers on a stage, wearing expressions they've rehearsed, speaking lines they don't believe, acting calm while their insides twist like wires about to snap. Daylight gives them a convenient excuse. Noise, people, distraction, movement. It's easy to pretend you're fine when the world is busy enough to drown out every whisper your heart tries to make. But the moment the sun goes down, the moment everything slows, the moment the mask loses its strength, that's when the truth finally crawls out from the corners they tried to bury it in. Night doesn't lie. Night doesn't negotiate. Night doesn't care about the brave face you wear for the world. It reveals you, piece by uncomfortable piece, until you're standing alone with feelings you can't outrun anymore. People fear the dark, but not because of monsters or shadows. They fear what they feel when no one is watching. They fear being left alone with their own minds, because that's when the real monsters come out. The regrets, the memories, the buried emotions, the longing, the fear, the truth that daylight keeps politely hidden behind routine. All day long they're distracted. They scroll, they talk, they laugh, they keep moving, trying to outrun themselves. But the night catches them. It always does. When the room gets quiet and the world settles down, that's when the thoughts start sharpening, growing louder, forming shapes they can't ignore. They feel things they swore they were done feeling. They remember things they tried to forget. They admit things they never had the courage to say. And the funniest part? They act surprised, as if these emotions just magically appeared out of nowhere, as if the feelings were strangers instead of old companions they've been avoiding. But night doesn't create anything. It simply reveals what was already there, hiding behind the daylight's noise. The ones who pretend they've moved on suddenly feel the ache they pushed away. The ones who said they didn't care feel the truth gnawing at their chest. The ones who tried to be strong feel the cracks spreading under the weight of everything left unspoken. It's not night that changes them. It's night that forces them to admit what was boiling beneath the surface all along. People say they love peace and quiet, but they don't, not really. Peace is terrifying when it strips away distraction. Quiet is unbearable when it exposes everything you've been running from. They lay there, staring at the ceiling, drowning in emotions they refuse to feel in the morning. That's when the truth becomes unavoidable. That's when their heart starts confessing what their mouth never had the courage to say. That's when they feel that sudden shock in their chest, that realization, that jolt of truth they can't deny. And it scares them because it means the emotions they avoided were stronger than the excuses they built. Some of them felt love last night, real, raw, inconvenient love they thought they'd outgrown. Some felt guilt chewing through the lies they told themselves. Some felt fear, not of the dark, but of the possibility that they're losing something they still want. Some felt longing, sharp enough to keep them awake. Some felt clarity, the kind that hits like lightning. And some felt the weight of truth they've been hiding from the world and from themselves. Night strips away illusions, revealing exactly what they feel without filters, without distractions, without the performance. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for the right time. It doesn't care whether they're ready. It simply pulls the curtain back and forces them to meet their real emotions face to face. And for many of them, what they felt last night wasn't small, wasn't accidental, wasn't meaningless. It shook them. It stunned them. It left them staring into the darkness, wondering why the truth feels louder at 2 a.m. than it ever does at 2 p.m. Truth hits hardest when the world is quiet. Isn't that the twisted little secret everyone avoids? All day long, people can dodge truth like it's some annoying fly buzzing around their heads. They can outrun it with noise, bury it under conversations, drown it in music, hide it behind fake smiles and forced optimism. Distraction is their favorite shield, and daylight gives them plenty of it. But when everything finally shuts up, when the world goes still, and the only sound left is their own breathing, that's when truth steps forward. Slowly, deliberately, like it's been waiting for this moment all day. And when it hits, it hits with a force no person has ever prepared for. See, the truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to argue. It doesn't need an audience. It just needs silence. Silence is a spotlight, and in that spotlight, every lie you've been telling yourself suddenly looks ridiculous. Every excuse you crafted collapses under its own weight. Every emotion you pretended not to feel starts clawing at your chest. People underestimate quietness because they think it's peaceful. But quietness, true quietness, it exposes everything. It rips open the things you lock away, and it makes you face them without warning. In the quiet, there's no one to impress, no one to blame, no distractions to hide behind. It's just you and whatever truth you tried so hard to avoid. That's why people toss and turn in the dark, overthinking every choice, every mistake, every feeling they denied. That's why their heart starts pounding at midnight even if nothing is happening around them. That's why they suddenly feel emotions they thought they'd buried months ago. Silence has a way of peeling back layers until the truth is staring at you with no mask, no filter, no mercy. And the funniest part? The truth was there all along. It didn't change. They just couldn't hear it over the chaos. In the quiet, they finally hear the things they've been pretending not to know. They realize they still care about someone they swore they were done with. They realize they're afraid of losing something they never admitted mattered. They realize the regret they tried to drown never actually left them. They realize the choice they made was more about fear than logic. And it shocks them, not because the truth is new, but because the quiet makes it impossible to ignore. People think truth hurts because it's harsh or cruel, but the real reason truth hurts is because they've been running from it. If you spend your days avoiding something, of course it feels like an attack when you finally come face to face with it. It's like ignoring a wound all day, pretending it doesn't sting, only to feel the full pain once the world calms down and your guard drops. Truth doesn't get stronger at night. They just lose the noise they use to numb themselves. It's those quiet moments, the ones they can't escape, that force them to confront what really controls them. Maybe it's love, maybe it's fear, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's desire. Maybe it's something they never wanted to admit. But in the silence, all those buried feelings rise like smoke in a closed room. They fill every corner of the mind until the person has no choice but to feel them. They start replaying conversations, remembering things they shrugged off earlier, analyzing glances, questioning decisions, realizing things that were obvious all along. And that realization hits them like a punch they never saw coming. People reveal their strongest truths not in the day when they're performing, but at night when they're alone. Their heart speaks louder when everything else shuts up. Their thoughts get sharper when the world stops distracting them. Their emotions run wild when they stop holding themselves together for others. And that's why the truth hits hardest in the quiet. It's the only time they're actually listening. They may deny it in the morning. They may pretend nothing happened. They may act unbothered once the noise returns. But deep down, they know. They felt it. They heard it. They faced it. And no amount of daylight can erase what the silence revealed. Buried feelings resurface when defenses fall, and that's the thing nobody ever wants to admit. People love to believe they're in control, that they've neatly packed away every emotion they don't want to deal with. They tell themselves they've moved on, grown, let go, as if their hearts are obedient little pets that follow instructions. But feelings aren't pets. They're prisoners, waiting, pacing, scratching at the walls, biding their time. And the moment your defenses slip, even just a little, they escape. They claw their way back to the surface, dragging every truth you tried to bury right along with them. All day long, your defenses stand strong. You stay busy, you act tough, you pretend you don't care, you distract yourself with work, people, jokes, noise, anything to keep the thoughts from creeping in. You build walls high enough to block out every inconvenient feeling. You push it all down, deeper and deeper, hoping it'll suffocate under the weight of your denial. But buried feelings aren't dead. They're just patient. They wait for your guard to drop. And when it does, even for a moment, they rise in a rush that leaves you breathless. Usually it happens at night or in silence or in the middle of something completely ordinary. That's the cruel part. You don't get a warning. You don't get preparation. One moment you're fine, the next you're drowning in emotions you swore you'd gotten over. A random memory hits you like a blade. A thought you pushed away months ago suddenly feels brand new. A name pops into your mind and your chest tightens before you can stop it. It's like your heart has been waiting for the perfect moment to remind you that you haven't healed half as much as you pretend to. And what do people do? They panic. They feel that old ache rising and they scramble to shove it back down. They try to laugh it off, deny it, rationalize it. They tell themselves it's nothing, just a passing thought. But deep down they know exactly what it is. It's the truth they buried because it scared them. It's the feeling they avoided because it meant something. It's the regret they never wanted to face. It's the love they couldn't admit. It's the guilt they tried to outrun, and once it resurfaces even for a second, it reminds them that no amount of pretending can erase what their heart still remembers. People think time heals everything, but that's the biggest joke life ever told. Time doesn't heal what you refuse to confront. Time only hides it. It piles new days on top of old wounds until you mistake distance for healing. But the wound is still there, waiting, and when your defenses fall, when you're exhausted, alone, vulnerable, honest, that's when the buried feeling reaches up and grabs you by the throat, not to hurt you, but to show you it never left. Some feelings resurface because they were never dealt with. Others come back because they were real, and real doesn't disappear on command. You can distract yourself from it, you can lie to yourself about it, you can pretend you've outgrown it, but deep down, you know. You always knew. The heart stores everything you tried to hide from yourself. It keeps every unspoken word, every unfinished emotion, every unresolved moment locked away until the day you're too tired to keep pretending. And when that day comes, when your defenses slip just enough for the truth to slip through, it shocks you, it shakes you, it confronts you. You start wondering why you're thinking about someone you swore you forgot. You question why the memory still stings. You feel something rise in your chest that you can't name, can't push away, can't control. And right there, Right in that uncomfortable moment, you realize the truth. You didn't bury that feeling. You buried yourself under denial. The heart is a funny thing. It doesn't follow logic. It doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't respect the walls you build. It remembers what mattered. It remembers what hurt. It remembers what was lost. And it brings those buried feelings back when you least expect it, when your mind is too tired to lie, when your guard is down and your defenses crumble just enough for the truth to slip through the cracks. And the irony is those resurfacing feelings aren't meant to torture you. They're reminders, signals, clues, proof that something inside you still needs attention, closure, understanding, acceptance. But most people run from them. They fear what resurfaces because it reveals what they're not ready to admit. People love to pretend they're strong. Oh, they walk around with their chests puffed out, acting like nothing scares them, like they've got everything under control. But deep down, deep in that little hidden room inside their mind, the one they lock up and stack excuses in, they're terrified of being seen, not looked at, seen, because the moment someone actually sees them, the whole performance falls apart. And that's what happened to them last night. That's why they felt something they couldn't explain, something that twisted inside their chest, like a secret they weren't ready to admit. They finally realize someone out there understands them. Someone sees their flaw, their chaos, their desire, their hunger for reassurance, and doesn't flinch. And the weight of that truth didn't scare them. It rattled them. It shook them because it was real. See, people expect big revelations to arrive with trumpets, fireworks, some grand divine announcement. But real revelations, the ones that split a person open and expose what's been hiding in their heart, come quietly. They creep in during the silence of the night, when the world finally stops shouting long enough for the truth to whisper. And that whisper is exactly what they felt. A sudden, sharp awareness. A moment where everything made sense and nothing made sense all at once. They tried to brush it off, of course. People always do. They tried to convince themselves it was just a thought, just a feeling, just a moment of weakness. But that's the funny thing about truth. It doesn't politely step aside just because you pretend you're not ready. It grips you by the spine and demands attention. And the moment they felt that grip, their mind started racing. They replayed old memories, old conversations, old moments where they ignored signs. They remembered the way your presence made their chest feel too small, the way your name seemed to echo louder than the others, the way they tried to outrun the pull you had without even trying. It all came crashing down in one sweep, like a spotlight flickering on in a dark room, and suddenly they couldn't hide from it anymore. They saw you not as an idea, not as a distraction, not as a passing thought, but as a gravitational force tugging at something real inside them. And that scared them more than anything else. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did nothing at all, yet still triggered this earthquake in their soul. They felt exposed, vulnerable, alive. They felt a longing they didn't want to admit, a certainty they weren't prepared for, a connection they didn't ask for but couldn't deny. They felt the truth of you, and for the first time, they didn't know how to run from it. So instead they froze, stuck between fear and fascination, between wanting to step closer and wanting to shield themselves from the intensity of what they were finally seeing. And while they lay there last night, staring at the ceiling, trying to steady their breath, they realized something even more unsettling. They weren't imagining it. They weren't exaggerating. They weren't creating some fantasy to comfort themselves. No. This wasn't something they invented. This was something that had been building quietly, steadily, beneath their excuses and distractions, a truth they had buried under busyness and jokes and conversations that never touched the surface. But last night something cracked through. Something pushed past the walls they built and whispered a reality they were too afraid to face. They felt the pull. They felt the significance. They felt the undeniable fact that you weren't just another person passing through their life. You were the one person they couldn't blur out, couldn't replace, couldn't forget. And the shock didn't come from the feeling itself. It came from realizing they had felt it for a long time. They just finally stopped running long enough to notice it. You ever notice how people pretend they can control their feelings? They walk around acting like emotions are obedient little pets that sit when told, stay when commanded, roll over when life whistles. But feelings don't listen. They don't negotiate. They don't care about timing or pride or whatever fragile image someone is trying to hold together. And that's exactly what happened to them. They were going along, telling themselves they had everything under control, that nothing could shake them, that nothing could slip through their defenses. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, your presence pushed through in a way that startled them. Not because you tried, but because truth has a way of slipping through cracks they didn't know existed. Last night they felt something that cut deeper than a simple thought, something that didn't ask permission before entering, something that hit them with the force of a memory they never lived but somehow recognized. It made their hearts stutter for a moment, as if trying to adjust to a message it wasn't prepared to decode, because for the first time, they admitted to themselves, in silence, that what they feel for you isn't casual, isn't temporary, isn't something they can shrug off like an inconvenience. It's bigger, louder, heavier. It's something that pulls instead of pushes, something that grows instead of fades. But instead of embracing it, they fought it, hard, because the truth isn't pretty. It doesn't arrive wrapped in neat little explanations or soft music. It arrives like a spotlight in a dark warehouse, blinding, sudden, unavoidable. And when that light hit them, they panicked. They scrambled for excuses, distractions, reasons to pretend it wasn't real. They told themselves they don't care, they don't need connection, they don't want vulnerability. They tried to drown it out with all the noise life provides. But noise is temporary, silence is honest. And when everything got quiet last night, when the world finally paused, the truth crawled back to the surface like it always does. They could feel the shift inside themselves, that moment when their chest tightened, not in fear, but in recognition. Recognition of you, recognition of the bond they've been trying to underestimate. Recognition of the fact that their feelings had already chosen their direction long before they consciously admitted it. And the realization didn't just surprise them, it cornered them, left them standing face to face with the one truth they couldn't talk their way out of. You matter to them in a way that disrupts their usual logic. You've carved out a place in their mind without asking for space. You've planted yourself in their heart without seeking permission. And it bothers them how naturally it happened, how they didn't get to plan it, how they didn't get to control the speed or the depth or the intensity. They're used to choosing their attachments. They're used to deciding who gets access and who doesn't. But you slipped through in a way nothing else ever has. You became the exception to the rules they built for self-protection, and exceptions terrify them, because exceptions force them to face their own humanity, their own longing, their own vulnerability. Last night they felt this weight, heavy, warm, undeniable, a feeling that rose from someplace deeper than thought, a feeling that didn't negotiate with their fear, didn't wait for their permission, didn't care about their hesitation. It simply arrived. And once it arrived, it refused to leave. They tried to sleep it away, laugh it away, distract themselves with anything loud and pointless. But nothing worked, because the feeling wasn't a fleeting impulse. It was a realization, a confirmation, an inner shift telling them they're not imagining this connection. They're not exaggerating it. They're not projecting some fantasy onto you. What they feel is real, and now they know it. And knowing something is real is much scarier than pretending it isn't. because now they can't lie to themselves anymore. They can't hide behind cynicism or avoidance or the illusion of emotional independence. They felt you, not as a passing thought, not as a curious moment, but as a truth they can't unfeel, a truth they're scared to accept and terrified to lose. And whether they wanted it or not, that truth has changed them in ways they're still trying to understand. Know what's funny about the mind? It pretends to be this big, rational machine, always calculating, always logical, always in control. At least, that's the lie people tell themselves just to stay comfortable. But intuition, that's a different creature entirely. It creeps in quietly, no announcements, no explanations, no fancy logic charts. It just whispers, soft, subtle, unsettling. And the moment someone tries to ignore it, that whisper grows teeth. That's what happened last night. Their logic was asleep, but their intuition was very much awake, pacing, observing, connecting dots they didn't even realize were part of the same picture. They tried to brush it off, of course. People always do. They cling to facts, timelines, excuses, anything that makes them feel like they're in charge. But intuition doesn't care about what they think they know. It cares about what's true. And the truth was pressing against them from every angle last night. This strange pull toward you, this sense that something about you fits, aligns, clicks in a way they can't rationally explain. It bothered them, fascinated them, scared them all at once. They kept asking themselves, why you? Why this feeling? Why now? And the only answer they got wasn't a sentence, a thought, or a theory. It was a quiet internal certainty, a feeling that didn't need words to make sense. It's almost hilarious how intuition works. It doesn't shout, it nudges. It doesn't push, it guides. And last night it guided them straight into a realization they didn't see coming. They felt this strange calm, mixed with a sudden clarity, like the fog in their mind lifted just long enough for them to see something they had been blind to. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the emotional chaos of the day catching up with them. Maybe it was that stubborn little ache in their chest that refuses to go away whenever they think about you. Whatever it was, their intuition finally spoke loud enough to be heard. They tried to argue with it. That's the best part. They ran through every scenario, every fear, every doubt they've been carrying like baggage they're too tired to drop. They told themselves it's just curiosity or attachment or temporary confusion. They tried to label it, categorize it, reduce it to something harmless. But intuition doesn't fit in neat little boxes. It ripped through their excuses like paper, because deep down they already knew. They've been knowing. They just didn't want to admit it. Last night their intuition painted a picture for them, a picture of you, not dramatic or romantic or theatrically emotional, just real, clear, honest. It showed them the way their energy shifts when you're in their mind, the way their guard slips a little without them noticing, the way something in them settles, even when everything else in their life feels messy and out of control. It's strange when someone feels familiar in a world where everyone else feels temporary. Strange and terrifying, because familiarity means connection, and connection means risk. They felt that risk last night, sharp, electric, undeniable. But along with it, they felt recognition. Recognition that you aren't just another passing person. Recognition that their mind reacts to you differently. Recognition that something bigger is at play, something they can't explain but can't ignore. Their intuition kept circling the same truth. This connection is real, not random, not accidental, not imagined, real. And the moment they let themselves feel that, everything inside them shifted. It was like their intuition had been knocking on the door for weeks, months even, and finally, they opened it. And what rushed in wasn't chaos or fear like they expected. It was understanding. It was the sense that all those little coincidences, all those sudden thoughts of you, All those moments where their mind wandered your way were pieces of a puzzle they didn't know they were assembling. Their intuition had been placing those pieces quietly, patiently, waiting for them to notice. And last night, they did. They noticed the pattern, they noticed the pull, they noticed the truth. It shocked them, of course. It always shocks people when their intuition reveals something their mind wasn't ready to accept. But shock doesn't erase truth. It highlights it. It makes it glow in the dark. And now that they've felt it, now that their intuition has spoken so loudly, they can't forget it. They can't unfeel it. They can't pretend it didn't happen. Their intuition handed them the truth, and whether they're ready or not, it's theirs. Now you ever notice how the loudest people in the room usually understand the least about themselves? They talk, they brag, they declare they don't feel anything, they don't care, they're untouchable. But the moment the lights go off and the world goes quiet, all that confidence melts like cheap wax in a fire. That's when the truth shows up, not with a bang, not with a scream, but with a quiet little whisper right behind the ear. And the funny part, that whisper is usually the one thing they've been running from. Hidden fears, hidden desires, hidden truths, they all crawl out the second nobody's looking. And last night, that's exactly what happened to them. They thought they were safe in their silence, safe behind their carefully built walls, safe inside this character they've been pretending to be. But night has a way of stripping people bare. It drags out everything they've buried under pride and excuses and pretended indifference. Last night they felt something they didn't want to admit, something they didn't want anyone to see, something that shook them, not because it was loud, but because it was too real. And real things are the hardest to run from. It started soft, almost innocent, a thought of you, a memory, a moment, just one tiny spark. They tried to brush it off, but that spark kept glowing, kept warming, kept spreading in ways they couldn't stop. They replayed conversations, little gestures, the way you look at them or the way you don't look at them. They felt the shift in their chest, that uncomfortable tug that always surprises them. And for a second, they paused, because that feeling wasn't supposed to be there, not for you, not this strong, not this real. But once a truth pushes through the door, it doesn't leave quietly. It starts opening every window, dragging out every hidden emotion they tried to bury. They felt fear, not the dramatic kind, but the subtle, personal kind, the kind that whispers this matters more than you want to admit. They felt desire, not the easy kind, but the one that hits you in the ribs and makes you realize you're not as detached as you claim to be. They felt a longing so unexpectedly deep it startled them, like discovering a hidden room in a house you thought you knew. And while all that was happening inside them, they tried to keep their composure. They tried to tell themselves they're imagining it, exaggerating it, reading too much into it. They tried to treat their feelings like misbehaving kids, silence them, scold them, shut them away. But feelings don't obey. They don't disappear just because someone pretends they're strong enough to ignore them. They rise, they grow, they demand to be acknowledged. And last night those hidden emotions broke through every barrier they built. What scared them most wasn't the feeling, it was the clarity. The realization that their heart reacts to you before their mind even catches up. That something about you reaches them in the places they don't let anyone reach. That you stir things in them they didn't think they were capable of feeling anymore. They kept trying to control it, deny it, rationalize it. But there's no logic strong enough to erase a truth that hits straight from the inside. They felt vulnerable, and vulnerability is their worst enemy. It exposes all the weaknesses they hide behind their confidence. It strips away the armor they wear around everyone else. But you, your presence, your memory, your impact, slipped past all of it. And that terrified them, because it means you see them in ways others don't. It means their feelings aren't as dead or frozen as they pretend. It means something inside them still works, still reacts, still hopes. Hidden truths rose to the surface last night, not to scare them, but to show them what they've been denying. Emotions they claimed they didn't have, attachments they swore they wouldn't form, care they insisted was impossible. But their heart doesn't follow their rules, it follows its own. And when the world went silent, it finally spoke. Maybe not in words, but in sensation.